Well folks, you've just woken him up. I hope he's in a good mood today. This is Chewits, that's my name for him, of course. Meccano's Meccasaur, and he's fantastic. Yes, he's a bit limited in what he can do, and we all know the problems of lack of programming with these Meccanoid based models, and indeed the Meccanoid. But he's fantastic, he's such a laugh. Again, doesn't do a great deal, but we'll go into that in another video where we've got a bit more room and somewhere where he can actually grip a bit better. He's alright on the wood, but he does move better than the sort of like sliding around he's doing now. So folks, here we are with Chewits, my Meccasaur. Finished him the other day, and I've had to switch him off because he'll just walk off set. As I say, this video is about the build, and or rather about the things I've found or didn't find, the good points, bad points of the build. Mainly because, one, it'll give a shorter video, and two, I can find somewhere better to operate him, hopefully with a bit more room. If necessary, I'll do it here. Now, before we go on to the build about Chewits here, I am using the new lighting. Those who have been on the Facebook page, or regular visitors to the Facebook page, or probably, in many cases, only visit the Facebook page of Meccano's Own. I bought some new lighting. Now they're only work lights. They're nothing fantastic. And these new LEDs, I am dubious about LEDs in the performance. Short range, they're not bad, but it falls off far too quickly. They weren't very expensive, and the build quality in some ways was better than the old ones, and in other ways it was worse. For example, I need screwdrivers to adjust the screws on them, to adjust the angles, which is a pain. I can't undo the one lot. Anyway, I mention that because let me know what you think of the lighting. I know the background is not very good for this, but it's a case of needs must when there is the larger models. And I haven't measured him, but I dare say with his head down slightly and neck, he's probably more than 3 feet. But he's fantastic, love him to bits, he's brilliant. He don't do a great deal, but what he does do, he does well, or at least most of it. But we'll come on to that in the operating video shortly. Now, as I have said many times probably, I start a build, I note the time, I make notes as I go. Note the times where I stop and pause, and then add it all up at the end, which adds to the time of the build. I don't take every little bit off for that. But I'll say now, this took me 7 hours. Now, that 7 hours didn't feel like 7 hours at all. It was such a good build. In some ways, that's because you make some parts, and then in that one stage where you make other parts in that stage, you don't use them for several parts. Early on, there's about a dozen stages, or parts of the build, whatever you want to call it, where you then use those parts a lot later on. So initially you think it's a bit of a surprise, basically, which is pretty good, really. However, there was a couple of there is one bit I would really like to improve, and a couple of other things, and my own cock-ups along the way, being a bit tired or whatever, and making the notes. So let's say a 6 hour build. So it falls between a small Meccanoid, a G15, or the 2 now, and the large one, the G15KS, or the 2XL. Now overall the parts are decent quality. The plastic ones, you know, people say plastic cheap, but the major plastic parts are certainly well made, and to be honest, they're nearly all major plastic parts. There's a few of the flip-flop strips, which are not as brilliant as you might think compared to some of the flexible metal strips, but I think you can see there he looks pretty good. The one part that would have stopped somebody who hadn't got any more Meccano, and that was one of the double angled strips. There's 2 of them, and they are used to join the head to the neck, and one was twisted slightly. One of the 1-inch ends was twisted, which was easy enough to straighten out with the Allen key in the hole, that's fine. But the other one, the 1-inch end, was bent so far over that the next time I saw it, the next day, it actually snapped off all by itself. Now the box was fine, so this was put in there like that. Now I've got a spare, but that's a bit of a downer, because if you haven't got any more Meccano, or you haven't got that specific part, and you contact Meccano, and they'll send you one, but it can take 6 to 8 weeks. So it should be a one-off, really. I mean, it's unlikely to happen the exact same part. So that was a bit of a downer, to be honest. But being having a decent stock of Meccano, basic parts anyway, I got round that. So here you can see the 2.5 inch by 1 inch double bent strips, and 2 of them holding the head to the top of the neck. And it was one of the uprights, as you can see here, say on the top right, that was bent right over, so much so that if you like just breathed on it, it fell off. Fortunately got one, but you know, that would be a bit of a down if you had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for just one of those. It's got to be a bit of a one-off, so you know, dare I say it, these things happen. Now folks, from this angle it may not be obvious, but it is to the naked eye. The feet, or the toes on the feet, are at different levels. If we take the left foot, that's the one on the right as we're looking now, just for example, the far right toe is higher off the deck than the middle one, and the middle one is slightly higher off the deck than the left one. Why I've done it like this I don't know. It works perfectly fine. Constraints on parts, whatever, maybe that is the case. That ain't so much of a problem. And none of it is really, but it sort of goes against the grain of stressing parts, I suppose. The metal strips that strengthen, brace if you like, the toes at the front there. On the right, far right of your picture, there's a 2 inch 5-hole strip connected to the far right toe as we look at it, and the centre toe with angle brackets. To the left of that there's a 1.5 inch 3-hole strip doing the same from the centre to, as we look at it here, the left hand toe. Same on the other side in reverse. Because essentially it's quite stepped between the toes, those angle brackets are slightly bent, and it's the same at the rear as well, with the like obtuse angled strip, a bit like a hockey stick shape. That's a bit awkwardly fitted, if you like. Now, whilst we're on about feet, we'll come on to the legs as well. Now, no matter how close you follow the diagrams and where the red lines show you where to put bolts, it's never going to be exactly spot on, as I found out. You see these lime green angled girders, plastic angled girders? Well, I fitted them as was shown, but they were just slightly too wide. So when you fit the leg, which you can see the bottom of, on the left the grey part, and in the centre the light grey part, it was forcing the legs apart slightly. So adjust those angle girders to suit the legs. When I said earlier, be careful looking at the diagrams for the parts and the colours, because they could sometimes throw you. Another one where it might throw you, stage 41. The red lines do not go through the holes in the 1/2 inch by 1 inch by 2 inch angled girder when they should. In other words, they miss the holes. So be careful on stage 41. Another thing that is a little bit problematic, and if you could rush it, it'll make an error or slow you down in the process. As I said before, some of the images are not very well defined for the more complicated shapes or unusual shapes, and this is probably the best example. This is on stage 66, and you've got this little bracket here, slightly dogleg bracket, but it's got this raised slot. Now that's a very good bearing surface actually, and the axle goes through here, and this connects with the motor unit, this large green part in the middle of him, and this moves in and out, and of course as it moves in and out, up and down, it moves the neck up and down, and by default operates the movement of the hands and the arms in a basic fashion. So the problem I had with that was that the image does not show that raised at all, so you could get fooled into thinking that part's missing because it actually doesn't look quite like the part it should. the image in the diagram shows this is quite flat, to be honest, so be very careful of that. There's only one of those, anything like that. There's nothing else like it, so if you find that, that's the one. Now folks, this is my worst gripe, because this and a related issue could spoil it for people if they don't stop and think about it. As I said earlier, you try and follow exactly what the diagram says. So if a red line appears to suggest that a bolt in a slotted hole is in a certain position, say at one end more than the other, you do that. And this is what I've done with this. Well, it's what you should always do, really. I mean, at the end of the day, they are instructions. You'll probably just be able to see. It's quite hard to get into it all now it's built. We've got a 3.5 inch strip this side, one the other side as well, just inside there. And at the end, at the top I should say, here, at the bottom of the brain, is an angle bracket, just a common angle bracket. The slotted end is fitted to the strip. And looking at the diagram, the angle brackets are essentially fitted quite high on the strip, utilising the slot quite a bit, so it's quite up. But when you fit the brain on top at the front, which is what you do first, you've got a gap at the back, so it's like that. In other words, it's level, which creates a slight gap at the back. Now, there's another problem with that. Whilst it's fairly secure, it probably would move around a bit, and then the angle bracket is of course only one bolt fixing, so they're bound to come loose. It may be an oversight in the design and the parts list, I don't know, one of the things that's been missed off, but there's plenty of play left in these bolts, plenty of length I should say, to fit some small plastic spacers, and I intend to do that when I get round to it. But anyway, with these angled brackets at the top, at the maximum height if you like, as per the instructions, it meant that one of the wires I couldn't get into the socket. This wire here, the red, black and white wire there with the black connector, that's fine. That comes from the light unit on the in the head. That's fine. Plenty of excess wire on that without being too much. The other wire here, this very much multicoloured one, sort of a light green, yellow, orange, red and brown wire, comes from the motor unit and fits into this wider black socket, which in turn obviously fits into the brain. It's the one in the middle, you can just see there, the white one. Basically it could do with being ½ inch, that's about 12-13mm, to 1 inch, that's about 25mm, longer. You cannot fit it into the socket with the brain level and the angled brackets up high on the strips as shown. So I took a bit of thinking. First up, be careful in your routing of this white wire. Basically you can't come round the front of the lever that operates the head. You've got to come close in, right down in the depths there. You've got to come close into the motor unit. And to have a chance, you've got to lower the angled brackets as much as possible so you can still fit this. Obviously you'll start hitting the top of the strips eventually, and then you have to take it down that far. Now there is a slight slope. It does fit in. I'll just push these back in. I want to put the batteries in, I just forgot to put the nuts back on in my haste to switch him on. So with the slight slope it is possible, but there ain't that much give in that wire. There's about 1/4 inch of play, and it's right tight in down the bottom there against other parts. I don't like that idea. So you can't drop the 3.5 inch strips any further because of other parts right down the bottom. I suppose 3 inch strips would probably be better, and then it'll probably slope slightly to the front, but only slightly. But what I would say is that if you get some, and I've got some lime green little plastic spacers, probably out the 5 model motorbike set, the multi-model set from about 4 or 5 years ago, there should be enough room there to get those under just nicely, and that would give you a nice little bit of play. It could still be being at least ½ inch longer. if not inch and a half, because that would tell you to route it to the best of everything practicality wise, and it won't get rubbed on anything, and you may be able to tie it up somewhere with Meccano cord, of course. So that is the main gripe, because it really shows the limitation in the length of the lead with the wire plug on the end. Back to these double angled strips, or double bent strips. The 2.5 inch by 1 inch ones here. Now, firstly, when you do fit the head, make sure these can be really, you can hear the bolt, the play there. Make sure they're really loose, because especially the top one, the strip actually rubs a lot of the contact surface area of the two parts, this plastic flange plate and the double bent strip there, rubs all the time, so it always seems stiff. What I will be doing, although it works quite well, is putting a blob of decent furniture polish there, just to keep it a little bit more lubricated, but it is brand new, of course. But the reason why we're looking at these again is really due to access, really. Now, stage 78, you fit in these double angled strips, mainly this one. The top one's easy enough, but it says to fit this first, then fit that. Well, you've already got this one on, and you've got a fiddle inside there. Okay, the head isn't on, but there's no arm, and it's far better to stick this on first, bolt that on first onto there before you fit this onto the main part of the neck. Now folks, another problem with the red lines in the instructions. When you come to, you fit this, well, I suppose sort of a brace girder on first, and you thread the axle through the raised green part that I said before. It comes across, and it's all to do with operating the neck and the head. And there's no rubber grommets or anything, and it may look like this is a complete major error. The red line comes through, and it's shown from the other side, and it comes through here. You can only just see it, and it appears that it's showing the axle being threaded all the way through. But as you can see, because the relation of the hole here, this hole here, is not perfectly in line with where the axle is, it's not going to come through. The red line is the error. It doesn't, if you like, the off-centered hole here holds the axle in place this end. Then later on you come to do the other side, and it's the same. The axle is held in by these, nothing else but these plates, one each side. So it may look like an error because of the red line, but it isn't. And I've just spotted something while I was lining up this shot, and it's not the easiest model to get into to video. Because of the flex of certain plastic parts like this here, just here, there's no support really across here. There's no holes either for a support, although we could get a bit closer. Because of that, there's a bit of flex, and I found the axle actually dropped out this end there. I'll see. I'll just show you. I think I should be able to show you. See there, like that. There's enough flex, and it's probably what I've done is when I've picked it up, because I've picked it up by at this point here. So really, you should pick him up from underneath. So be careful that doesn't fall out, and don't lose it. And just be mindful that that isn't an error. That's how it's supposed to be. But I could understand you thinking that the way the red line is in the instructions. Springs, or rather the fitting of the springs, stages 82 and 83, basically one side and the other. This end is easy enough, but this end, trying to get in here, because all this is on by then. Basically you start from the feet up, which sort of makes sense, and it's quite a stable model, a creature. I mean, I'm sat on the edge of the bed, that's why it's moving around a bit, and that's me. You know, I really have to rock him to make him to even have a chance of falling over. But because the way it has been built, and you get to this stage, you've got these braced girders on by then, and you can see it now pulling on these springs. They're the same common springs that have been around for donkey's years, certainly in the army multi-kit, amongst many others probably. Anyway, that's going back to like the late 70s, well, mid to late 70s I suppose, or so. But with this all on, you try and get in there and it's a nylock nut, because these obviously pivot. It's a nylock nut. Now you might think, oh, use the grippy end of the spanner, and indeed you would for a standard nut, but they don't fit the nylock nuts. So it was just a case of perseverance. Not too bad. As you can appreciate with many models, there are some places that are quite awkward to get at. That's the same the other side as well. Now, flip-flop parts. In general, folks, I had no problem. Well, I didn't really have any problems with the flip-flop parts. They do the job okay. Some better places than others. A good place is the nose, the top of the nose here. That's fine, you know, and you've got these quick snaps as well, which sort of smooth the line a bit. There's some nuts and bolts as well holding them on. So yeah, those curved, you know, leave the bolts loose and then arrange it before tightening it all up. It's fine. But when you got the tighter angles, the flip-flop strips are no better than really standard narrow strips in this case, and I'll tell you why, if you can't see it. See how they've gone stepped across the holes? When they've curved, they've kinked across the holes, because it's quite a tight angle there. So you got it kinked quite aggressively there, and then it moves along, and it's kinked a little bit there, but not too bad. And again this side, the top one isn't quite as bad. It's slightly less of a curve, but that one's gone like it has. Now the usual trick with metal strips to bend is to use axles in the holes as levers, so you're bending at the holes, not like bending at the ends and putting all the stress across the hole. Now that may be worth a try with these, but you don't have any axles at this stage, and you've only got that one which I've just showed you to do with the mechanism for the neck. So that ain't that brilliant. In fact, I think you could better see down below here, done the same. See how it's stepped across there at an angle, like a hexagon if you like. So not brilliant there, and too much of that they'll snap. The metal ones snap just like that, and these probably last a bit more, have a bit more longevity, but not a lot if you keep using them like that. This is one part that does actually works well, but I would have done it differently, and not at much extra cost, and I may even improve it. Doesn't really matter. But this is the lever. It's like a pushrod more than anything that operates the neck and the arms, and well, the head doesn't really move left to right, nor does the tail. They move around with the movement of the creature. Now the tail is just a pivot, just hanging off of one bolt with a nylock nut on, although it's a long one, and that it almost moves like it actually is connected. But yeah, it does the job, but it's a bit cheap and it's easy to damage when you're putting it on. There's one stage in the book that's pointless, and all that is showing you to put this lever from hanging down position up to here. It doesn't show you anything else. It's the next stage that shows you how it lies together and what you do with the bolt. Now here we've got a double bracket, but it's only a narrow one, not very strong at all. Although ample for this really. I'd have used a standard width one there, a bit more strength, and I'd use some spacers on there as well. Talking of this lever, when you come to put the neck on, this bit here, it doesn't really show you where this goes. Does it go through the middle, or does it go underneath? Bit of guesswork there, but as you can see it goes underneath. Now this is probably a first, as far as I know it is anyway, so if anybody who knows more than I do, which is like probably everybody, if this is a first, please let me know. See that axle there? It's a fair bit thicker than your normal Meccano axle. I know you can get more heavy duty stuff in reproduction and new parts, not true Meccano parts of course, but parts created by dealers or for dealers, independent dealers, and it's a good way when you're building really complicated heavy models to spread the load, and you can get parts with bearings in. But here we've got, I'm going to call it a heavy duty axle. It's approximately twice the diameter of a standard axle, very robust, and of course it's that little linkage there between both sides that really makes it all work. That's a handy bit of stuff, and some of the parts, like these braced girders, if you want to call them that, have the odd larger hole in to accept that. So and this plastic can provide a decent bearing surface, so that's something, and I reckon that's a first in any Meccano set, officially produced Meccano set. And the last little thing to show you folks, or to point you in the right direction of, the arms and his hands, claws if you like. Now the instructions show you building those with some of the bolts threaded through from the opposite side, as you can see now. Not all of them, but some of them. Now it makes no difference to the operation, but when you look on the box, all the bolts are shown this way with all the heads facing you, not inside, not inboard if you like. Makes no difference except that it looks a damn sight neater like this. You would normally expect the picture on the box to be the problem part. A lot of the times the photographs are taken from prototype models, so there's sometimes they're not quite as what you get in the set. Things they do say on the boxes, don't they? Colours and things may change, blah blah blah. So there we are folks, that's all the little things I think, and most of the little things are down to how you are shown to do it in the book. Not that they're bad by any means, there's just a few little, I think I've got a new word I haven't used before, quirks in where the red lines go, or the actual image, the way the artistry is or isn't in each section or certain sections. So really take your time, I suppose. The brain, some of which is caused by, well, say poor images on some of the parts, and let's be kind and say the lead with the white plug being only really just long enough, and that's being kind. Other than that, they're just hopefully all the little things that I've found, the way I've seen the build, the way I've gone about the build, which is really as I've been shown in the book, apart from putting those spaces in the back of the brain. That's how I see it, and now hopefully you'll know about these little things, and you'll go straight, instead of like saying putting some of the bolts one way and some the other way on the arms, you'll go straight to doing it that way. Not that I say that makes any difference to it operating, but I think you get my point, I hope, anyway. So there you are. I think he's great. He has a great presence. He's very much a fun character, or creature, and he's quite a laugh a minute, really. I appreciate the lack of programming in all these, shall we say, Meccanoid based creations, and I'm not really into that side of things, but I can see totally where people are coming from. This one being less than half the price at the moment, and of course it's brand new, than a large Meccanoid, that's got to help, and the kids are going to love it. They may be a bit scared by him to start with, but I think it'll be good. So I'll try and find somewhere better to operate him, and if not, we'll have to struggle along in here. So that'll come up shortly, and now I'm going to bed. Bye for now. See ya.